Welcome back, folks, to WrestleRant. I am Graham Justin Matthews, and for the entire month of May, I'm breaking down every installment of Judgment Day as seen on the WWE Network. And if you haven't already, go back and check out my other reviews of Judgment Day 1998, 2000, 01, 02, 03, 04, and 05, already up here on the channel. Today is talking all about Judgment Day 2006, and a pretty good show on the whole, pretty solid as well as most of the other Judgment Day events. I'm kicking off the show for the WWE Tag Team titles. Joey Mercury and Johnny Nitro, collectively known as Eminem, along with Melina in their corner, defending the tag team titles against Paul London and Brian Kendrick. This is around the time that London and Kendrick were just new on the scene. They had been with the company for a while, but new on the scene as a tag team. And London and Kendrick were always a team. I always loved them as a team. I thought they were great. Had a very long run as WWE Tag Team Champions following this point. I think the longest running Tag Team Champions in WWE history. I think they would hold those titles for about another year before dropping them to Deuce and Domino on an episode of SmackDown, I believe in April of 2007. So this was the start of a very long reign for the Tag Team Champions and Paul London and Brian Kendrick. But the match itself, that was very nice. It served nicely as the opener, and that would be kind of the story of the night, with the teasing tension between between the members of Eminem, Joey Mercury, and Nitro, and the dissension between them and Melina and whatever else. And I'll get to that in a minute. But the match itself was very nice. Got about 13, 14 minutes, and very nice, like I said, in the opening slot. A lot of back and forth, exciting in-ring action. Paul London and Brian Kendrick pulling out the victory to pick up to win the WWE Tag Team titles. Like I said, they would, from this point forward, embark on the longest reigning tag team title run in WWE history. Then immediately following the matchup, Joey Mercury and Johnny Nitro split up. They got in an argument, and Melina was getting in some fighting words with Joey Mercury. They were going back and forth. Melina started slapping Joey Mercury. Mercury was going to fight back. Nitro, on behalf of his girlfriend Melina, started beating up Joey Mercury, and they would beat the crap out of him and leave him lying. So they went to the back. Melina had a match later on in the night, so I'll get to that after she has her match and as to what happened there. But I don't know if this was teased. I know the commentators were talking about how Eminem had won a match in like 5 or 6 weeks. But I believe, from what I read after watching this show, that Joey Mercury actually had to serve a 30-day wellness policy after being suspended. A 30-day suspension after being suspended via the wellness policy in WWE. So they had to break up the team immediately. No tag team title rematch. I don't even know if there was any tension or any build to this split. Like I said, I think it was just kind of done at random. Joey Mercury and Johnny Nitro was a really good team. I enjoyed their matches with the Hardys about a year or so later. But it was obvious that after they brought Nitro to Raw, they didn't have any plans for Mercury past this tag team. And of course, after that little reunion in late 06, early 07, they got rid of Joey Mercury, so that's not all that surprising. Now he's back, all these years later as an agent in J&J Security and whatever else, but still a really nice tag team match, and I'll get to what else happened between Eminem later on in the night after Melina's match. Up next, Chris Benoit versus Finlay, and this matchup came about after the two collided in the King of the Ring tournament in not the semifinals, in the quarterfinals. Finlay beat Chris Benoit after cheating to win, using a steel chair and the shillelagh and whatever else, Finlay's typical, underhanded heel tactics. Benoit would get back at him. I don't know if he would cost him his match against Lashley in the semifinals of the tournament. I'm not sure. The video package did not recap that, but I know that that was the premise for this matchup on this show. But a really good matchup, as one would only expect. The commentators were kind of prefacing it before the matchup, saying this is going to be brutal. You have two of your most competitive, two of your most brutal, two of your most aggressive competitors in WWE history, Chris Benoit and Finlay, two submission specialists. So it was cool to see these two, the two of your biggest brawlers, I guess is the word that I was looking for, in Benoit and Finlay, and these two just going all at it, just going all in, just going right at it. And I really enjoyed it. I love the time that it got to. It got a little over 20 minutes. They were just allowed to go out there, just beat the living crap out of each other. It was more of, it was also a very enjoyable match as well, but it was more about these two just going out there and just beating the living crap out of each other. It was great. So I really, really enjoyed that. I thought that was an enjoyable matchup. Benoit picking up the victory via submission with, of course, the crippler crossface and avenging his loss to Finlay. So a really nice undercard matchup between Benoit and Finlay. Up next, Divas action between Jillian Hall and Melina. So I guess the premise for this feud, or this matchup, was the two just getting in an argument backstage, and Melina was taunting Jillian Hall about her getting fired from the cabinet, and Melina fired back, and the two just started Jillian Hall fired back, and the two just started brawling backstage on an episode of SmackDown. So Not much build for this matchup, but that's what it was. It was okay. I'm glad it only got about 4 minutes. I mean, Jillian Hall was never a great in-ring worker. Melina's always been really good, but the match was just kind of throwaway. There was really no reason to care about it. And then the end came when Jillian Hall was pinning Melina near the ropes. Melina had her hand on the ropes. The referee didn't see it. Jillian Hall won anyway. It was, a meh match. That's basically all that I can say about it. But after the match, Melina went backstage, started complaining to SmackDown general manager at that time, of course, Teddy Long, complaining about the loss, talking about how they deserve they never should have lost the tag team titles, her and Nitro, blah, 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 blah. She slaps Long, which in turn causes him to fire both Melina and Johnny Nitro, kind of serving as the reason why they would jump to Raw about a week and a half later. I guess they wanted to kind of add Nitro to their mid-card over on the Monday Night Raw scene. Not waiting for the WWE. Or there was a draft that year, but I don't think it was, your standard WWE draft like we would see, in more recent years and subsequent years. That I think was the draft that year, I think was just to take RVD and Kurt Angle over to ECW. I don't think it was anything beyond that. But still, the firing of Eminem in just one night, going from tag team champions to Nitro Melina on Raw, or not officially on this show, but just going from them being champions to being fired, and Mercury was out of there as well. So, I thought, it just came completely out of nowhere. It would have been nice if they had more build to it, but they had to do what they had to do, considering the fact that Mercury got himself suspended. And would they have retained here? Who knows? I would think so. After all the losses they took, I would assume that it was building them successfully retaining here in London, and Kendrick may have taken the titles off of them at a later point. But, they made the most of the situation, and Nitro, of course, is going to become a pretty bright singles competitor over on Raw, winning the Intercontinental Championship several times over on that show. Up next, for the Cruiserweight Championship, Gregory Helms defending against Super Crazy. Pretty standard Cruiserweight matchup. I enjoyed it. It was a pretty fun matchup, but as was with many of the Cruiserweight matches over on SmackDown during this time, it didn't really have much of a story. I enjoyed Gregory Helms. I liked his, brash, cocky competitor persona that he had going on around this time. But, I think he could have been more than a cruiserweight level tier guy. I know that was the division that he wrestled in. That was kind of his. He was, I know that was the division that he wrestled in WCW. That was the division that he fit, whatever. But I feel like they could have done more with the guy. He was very, very good. But yeah, it was a fun matchup, and man, I can't really complain, but it just didn't really have a story behind it. There really wasn't any reason to care about it. And I mean, I'm just thinking of this right now. Are the Cruiserweight Championship matches, or the Cruiserweight Championship, or the Cruiserweight matches in general over on the SmackDown brand kind of the equivalent to the Divas matches on Raw? Kind of those filler matches. And this is an all SmackDown pay-per-view, by the way. But that's what it kind of felt like to me, just kind of a filler match in the show. Well wrestled, but other than that, they just didn't really care about it. So Gregory Helms comes out of this matchup victorious, still the Cruiserweight champion. Up next, Mark Henry versus Kurt Angle. Now this feud goes back to earlier in the year. I don't think I reviewed that Rumble. I probably will next year though. The 2006 Royal Rumble pay-per-view event where Kurt Angle, or even before that, when Kurt Angle came over to the SmackDown brand and won the World Heavyweight Championship in an over-the-top rope battle royal, lastly eliminating Mark Henry, serving as the foundation for their feud going into the Rumble, where Kurt Angle successfully retained the title against Mark Henry. That was pretty much the end of that feud for right then and there. I mean, it was a pretty terrible match, so I don't know why. Did that close the show? I feel like it did. Either that or Cena and Edge. I feel like Angle and Henry closed the show for whatever reason. It was a terrible match. But Undertaker made his return that night, so maybe that was why. I'm not really sure. But that would kind of serve as the basis for this feud, for the revival of this rivalry later on in the year. After Mark Henry was done with The Undertaker, would move on to this feud with Kurt Angle, putting him through a table not once but twice, jumping off the top rope at one point to splash Kurt Angle through a table, which was brutal. And even worse, Kurt Angle set up on a table at ringside, and the Mark Henry jumping from the ring apron and is splashing right on top of Kurt Angle, which looked brutal. And then storyline cracking the ribs of Kurt Angle, coming back a month too soon, only a month removed from the attack. Kurt Angle is back in action. So that's kind of the out for him losing in this matchup. It was a decent match, I'm sure better than the Royal Rumble match they had earlier on in the year. But, it really wasn't anything that special. Kurt Angle got as good of a match as he could out of Mark Henry. So for that, I commend him. But, the count-out finish kind of kept the feud alive, but I'm not exactly sure why, because I know at the next pay-per-view I think it was the ECW pay-per-view, the one night stand show that they did Orton versus Angle. So they didn't do Angle versus Henry, so maybe they blew off the feud on SmackDown. It was a nice win for Mark Henry, but it wasn't like it was really leading anywhere. I know he was probably set to feud with Batista when he came back later that year, but Mark Henry ended up getting hurt as well, so that feud never ended up coming to fruition. But whatever. A nice win for Mark Henry. It was a decent match, nothing too great, but definitely better than any atrocity of a match that they had earlier on in the year. So Kurt Angle is protected. A nice win for Mark Henry, and I think Angle beat the crap out of him after the match anyway, so I don't know what the point of that was. He did an Angle slam on top of one of the commentating tables, which did not break. I don't know if that was a botch or if it was supposed to happen, whatever. So why not just give Angle the win in that case? I know Mark Henry won, but if you're going to have Angle attack him after the match, what's the point? Up next in the finals of the 2006 King of the Ring tournament, Booker T taking on Bobby Lashley. In a pretty good matchup. I mean, it wasn't too great or anything like that, but it gave me the feel that I got at WrestleMania this past year with Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar when Roman Reigns kicked out of all those F5s. That's basically what they did here with Bobby Lashley. They had him kick out of a bookend, then they had him kick out of an axe kick, and then a second axe kick, I think was what finally took him out and gave Booker T the victory. So it was obvious they were trying to protect Bobby Lashley. He was a star on the rise. They were really trying to push him at this period in time over in the SmackDown brand. So nothing too surprising. But, it still made for a good match. They made him look good in the feet. And it was, Booker T obviously receiving help from later to be known as Queen Sharmell at ringside, his wife, obviously. But a good matchup. Booker T getting that King of the Ring crown, kind of, this would lead to his whole King Booker gimmick for the remainder of his WWE tenure, for that tenure anyway, before he came back a couple years ago. But yeah, nice win for Booker T, who kind of gave him a boost going into the world title push, the biggest push of his career in WWE, about a month or two later. And Bobby Lashley, like I said before, would look good in the feet. He took out Booker T afterwards anyway, much like with Angle and Henry. He took out Booker T after the matchup regardless. I think he speared him through the throne or something. So unlike with Mark Henry and Angle, where I said, why not just give Angle the victory in that case? In this case, they obviously wanted to do Booker at the King of the Ring gimmick. I mean, you couldn't have done that with Lashley, who couldn't, speak to save his life. So I'm glad that, the result was what it was with Booker T going over. But Bobby Lashley got a sense of retribution following the matchup regardless, and kind of keeping that feud alive for the next couple of months. I think through the remainder of the year, because I know Bobby Lashley would chase the World Heavyweight Championship that belonged to Booker T at one point in late 2005. So kind of keeping the feud alive between those two for the time being. Up next, the Great Khali taking on The Undertaker. And, of course, this is right around the time that The Undertaker, or the Great Khali, rather, had just debuted in WWE, immediately making an impact by taking out The Undertaker in night one. And much like with Bobby Lashley, it was painfully apparent that they were very high on Khali as a talent, or just as a performer, because they had him destroy everyone on SmackDown. They had him beat the world champion Rey Mysterio, which was not too uncommon at that period in time. Everyone beat Rey Mysterio when he was world champion, unfortunately. But, Khali got that big push over in the SmackDown brand. It really says something for him to be immediately put in a feud with The Undertaker instead of working his way up. And the guy was, an impressive specimen, an impressive physical specimen. You look at the guy, he's freaking huge. But other than that, I mean, in the first few matches that he had, it was, obvious, like I said, painfully apparent that he was very, very limited in the ring, that he could not do much. And thankfully, this was more of a beatdown than a match. I mean, it was a huge push for Great Khali, who again, they made, gave him the Bobby Lashley treatment. Not really, but in this case, it was actually warranted, with Undertaker kicking out of move after move and just, taking all this punishment at the hands of Great Khali, who eventually won cleanly with a big boot or something. And he just kicked him right in the head, and he got the pin by, just standing on his chest. But yeah, I mean, a very dominant win for the Great Khali. I mean, it was a nice way of booking a new talent, a fresh face, but the issue here is that it was the Great Khali. I mean, how well can you book a guy who can't wrestle for shit? The surprising part, I think, about all of this is that this guy ended up surviving in WWE for the next, 9 years before the guy finally got cut late last year. So I think that was more surprising than anything else. But yeah, just a complete one-sided beatdown from the Great Khali. A nice dominant win for him, giving him a nice, a huge victory over The Undertaker and keeping that feud alive through the rest of the summer. In the main event for the World Heavyweight Championship, Rey Mysterio defending against JBL. So again, this felt a lot like the previous matchup, where JBL just dominated most of the matchup. And I know Rey Mysterio's gimmick was the ultimate underdog, and I don't know if most of his matches were like this, and I know they kind of fed him to Mark Henry and to Kane and to Great Khali, like I said, all these giants in the weeks leading up to this pay-per-view, having him lose most of those matches, may I mind you. And I guess that was the story they were trying to tell here, with JBL just beating the crap out of an injured Rey Mysterio, and like 90% of the offense, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that, went to JBL for most of this matchup before Rey Mysterio finally hit JBL with a chair when the referee wasn't looking with a 619, hit the frog splash and got the 1-2-3 to retain his World Heavyweight Championship. Chavo Guerrero coming out afterwards to celebrate the victory, and of course that would lead to their feud over with Chavo costing him the World Heavyweight title at the 06 Great American Bash pay-per-view a couple months later. The match itself I thought was good. I mean, early on it was just kind of boring. JBL matches don't really do much for me, unless, with the rare exception of an I Quit match at the 05 Judgment Day pay-per-view, or, there's not really many JBL matches that I was really enthralled by. But, it was a good match. It told a really good story with Rey Mysterio kind of overcoming the odds and trying to take it to JBL and retain his title. So it told a good story, and down the stretch, people were into it, and, after Rey Mysterio kicked out of everything that JBL had to offer, and it was kind of overbooked with all the referees being taken out and all that other stuff. But like I said, it was exciting, it was suspenseful, it kept people intrigued, and it had the right result with Rey Mysterio retaining the World Heavyweight Championship. And you also kind of knew that JBL wasn't going to win. He was United States champion at that period in time, so you knew that he wasn't going to win both belts. Why they didn't take the title off of him before that, I have no idea. To give it to I know they ended up giving it to Lashley like a week after this, but they should have just done it before the pay-per-view to make this match a little less predictable. But it is what it is. I thought it told a good story, a solid main event, and Rey Mysterio still your World Heavyweight Champion. So on the whole, I thought this was a good show. It was pretty decent for the most part. No 5-star classics. No, in some previous Judgment Days, we've had the Benoit versus Angle matches, and then the tag team title ladder matches, and the JBLs versus the John Cenas. Those kind of matches where, you need to go out of your way to watch it. With this show, there really wasn't that kind of match. The only real match I would say that you need to go out of your... not even need. Some good matches to go out of your way to watch. Benoit versus Finlay was really good. I enjoyed that. The main event was good, too, so probably those two matches over anything else I would say go out of your way to see. Great Khali, unless you're a Great Khali fan, I wouldn't suggest watching that match. Just a pretty one-sided squash for Khali. Booker T and Lashley was good for what it was. Same thing with Henry and Angle. A lot of these matches were just kind of filler. Judgment Day is kind of that pay-per-view to begin with. Sometimes it's like the culmination of feuds. Sometimes it's like we'll just use this as we'll use this pay-per-view as a filler, as like a pit stop before Great American Bash and SummerSlam and whatever. It never really culminates feuds, or at least that had in the final years of the pay-per-view's existence. But yeah, I thought it was a decent show. I didn't really overly enjoy it. I enjoyed it, but I didn't think it was like an overly great show or anything like that. So like I said, Benoit and Finlay, Rey Mysterio and JBL, go out of your way to check out those matches. And then the rest of the card was what it was. The opening match also too was pretty fun for the tag team titles with London and Kendrick winning those belts. And that's going to do it for my review of Judgment Day 2006. Always appreciate your viewing and listening, so thank you for that. But in the meantime, and in between time, you can check out my full reviews of past Judgment Day installments right here on the channel, including Judgment Day 98, 2000, 01, 02, 03, 04, and 05, including 06, this video itself, before Judgment Day 07 review tomorrow right here on the channel. You can find me on Twitter at WrestleRant, on Facebook at facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. Make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. All support is greatly appreciated. Thanks again, folks, and I'll catch you tomorrow for my review of Judgment Day 2007.